Well, this is a political handball, it feels like.
Yes, it is very sensitive. We've got US and China. The US is trying really hard to decouple from China, and Chinese companies are trying really hard to access the US market. And the automakers, the American automakers are caught in the middle because, GM, Ford, every Stellantis, they've all poured billions of dollars into making batteries and forming joint ventures with their Korean battery makers and, gotten a lot of subsidies from the US government in order to do so. But
Right.
because EVs are not selling well, because they've had struggles making batteries, which is normal, making batteries and EVs for the first time in your 100-year history, it's not going to go smoothly right off the bat. It never does. Didn't for Tesla, doesn't for anybody. So they're under pressure. And so this potential deal, which is still tentative, it's just talks, nothing is finalized, would be a way for American car companies to get access to cheap, you know, really cutting edge battery technology from China without tripping up all the political wires that could, potentially trip up when you work with a Chinese company.
Right. Well, I think the basics of what we heard from sources is really important. The mechanics are such that the battery technology is licensed from CATL, a Chinese company, but the operations are run by a conglomerate from Japan called TDK, which many of the people on this show probably haven't heard of, but they're basically a consumer electronics company. And then GM and other automakers, I think is what we're hearing, right, Gabby, would buy the batteries on fixed term contracts. So they're kind of insulated from price swings. Take it from there. What else do we know?
Well, I think one of the most interesting things about this is that you've got a Japanese company acting as a middleman. Up until now, we've seen Ford and Tesla do these kind of cute kind of licensing deals where they can use CATL technology without, violating any rules or tripping any political wires. Now, this is a new development in how the auto industry is adapting to the political environment and the EV environment and the fact that they're, not profitable on making EVs yet. So we know that, yes, we know that GM and CATL and Japan's TDK, which makes they're a supplier for the iPhone. They, make batteries for consumer electronics. They want to get into the EV battery business, and this could be a way into it. So they're looking at states in the southern U.S., and I think that, obviously this is so sensitive politically that I think the results of the presidential election in November could potentially, affect the outcome of these talks.